Discarded Beasts, File 9, Devourer. Worms do not perceive the world the way a person would. A worm can breathe through its skin, regenerate massive portions of the body when destroyed, and remain resilient to nearly all physical stimuli, preventing it from feeling pain. However, despite lacking physical feeling, it has been suggested that worms do indeed have a sense of emotion, such as happiness, sadness, and rage. Kalita remembered the book she read on worms in her younger days, as she watched the massive machine decimate a nearby building. Undermine, the large worm, seemed to be doing significant damage to the city. Kalita watched as the worm tore through the nearby buildings and anything else in its path. After what felt like a few minutes of confusion while watching the worm effortlessly destroy anything that stood in front of it, Kalita was startled by a hand resting upon her shoulder. Looking behind her, Kalita sees Leland staring towards Undermine. The stone-cold expression they hold turns to a smirk before looking to Kalita. "Do you see what I mean? Look at the devastation a single machine can cause. Surely, you know the solution." Kalita bounced her gaze from Undermine to Leland to Undermine and then back to Leland. "I do," she lied. "Good. In that case, ready yourself. Every second we wait is another moment this thing will be running rampant." Leland watched as Undermine seemed to stop whatever it was doing and freeze for a moment. It moved its head around until it saw Kalita and quickly burrowed into the ground, moving towards her through the earth faster than any living creature she had seen before. "Here it comes," Leland said, as they braced themselves in a fighting stance, one which Kalita tried and failed to copy. As the worm breached the earth, so did Leland's sword from its sheath. Undermine recoiled as the sword slashed a large gash into the worm's clitellum. Neither Kalita nor Leland knew what it was doing, but only Kalita cared enough to question it. "Kalita, now!" Leland shouted, spooking Kalita and causing her to hastily chew a tear into her cheek. It was this tear which caused her split-second decision to spit a dagger of ice towards the eye of Undermine, hitting it dead on and causing it to once more fall back in what looked like pain. It quickly dug itself into the ground, disappearing from view for the time being. Kalita opened her mouth to comment on the situation, but was shushed by Leland's hand being placed in front of it. "Before you place a jinx onto us, be aware the creature is likely preparing a ranged attack." Kalita nodded her head and simply agreed with Leland and moved on, not wanting to start an argument with Leland in the middle of the battle. Before the two could take a single step or converse, though, the rumbling in the ground right beneath them caught their attention and raised their alertness. Both Leland and Kalita made the split-second decision to jump out of the way of the worm. It proceeded to come rocketing from where the two previously stood. However, Undermine looked much different now, changing color from a dark green to a light gray, and it looked to be made from rock and stone instead of flesh and blood. As it arced through the sky, it quickly dug into the earth, falling once more out of view. Kalita stumbled to the ground, barely escaping in time before quickly scrambling to her feet. She tried her best to come up with some sort of plan on the fly, looking around her for anything she could use to assist in the fight. She knew that worms use their circular muscles to lengthen and push themselves forward in order to move, recalling from the book she read in her younger days. Perhaps she could potentially trick this worm into ramming its body into a surface harder than it could break. Her eyes quickly scanned the surrounding area, looking for something stronger than the stone that comprised its long body. Rarely had she needed to ponder the idea of what an opponent's factor was. Undermine provided a challenge to Kalita, but she knew that the worm Undermine more than likely had some sort of ability which allowed it to change the composition of its body. She didn't know anywhere near how much blood this ability used, but she figured it would be easier for her to try and outright beat it rather than outlast it. If all else failed, she knew she could rely on her friend Leland to get the job done and finish the worm off. After a moment, Kalita realized that her best bet at finding something Undermine couldn't mind under is the large metal ship located somewhat nearby. As Kalita dodges a second eruption from Undermine, she tries to communicate her idea to Leland, but is stopped by a shard of rock hitting her open mouth. Thankfully, it missed her teeth, but her tongue was not so lucky, being significantly damaged by the attack. At first, Kalita found herself annoyed, but soon came to realize that this might be a blessing in disguise. She made several loud and clear movements to ensure Undermine could detect her, then she waited. She focused on the ground as she let her decimated tongue rapidly fill her mouth with blood. As she sat and waited for her plan to come to fruition, Leland was in the process of forming a much simpler plan, that being to cut the worm in half as it attacked her. Leland knew something like this wouldn't be smart enough to consider the danger a sword would pose, but despite making more than enough noise to draw its attention, it seemed as if the worm was only attacking Kalita. At first it was coincidence, then it was happenstance, but as Leland watched the thing fling itself at Kalita a third time, she felt a twinge of jealousy form within her as the worm seemed to consider Kalita a bigger threat. "Kalita, of all people! Can you believe this, Ladon?" Leland asked incredulously. What did slightly surprise her was Kalita's mad dash towards the nearby boat, as Leland didn't know what Kalita was planning. Even so, it was clear that she had some idea forming within her mind. Leland looked on, a mix of confusion, confidence, and concentration on her face, as Cleta started stomping and dancing on the river's edge, clearly trying to get the worm's attention. Her plan was almost entertaining to watch, so entertaining that Leland didn't notice as the ground began to shake beneath her. Cleta stood on the river's edge, unsure of her plan, but sure she could handle whatever Undermine's next attack was. The plan was simple, going smoothly and soundly up until that point. When Undermine changed its course, Leland was the one who was attacked. The ground between the two split as the worm erupted up before her very eyes. Cleta could only watch as her first friend disappeared into the worm. While at first she felt fear for Leland, she soon realized it was the worm she would feel sorry for, as Leland returned to Cleta's line of sight and quickly cut the creature in half from the inside, the two separate parts falling into the water. Leland landed on her feet, panting, but mostly unharmed. Cleta rushed over, hugging Leland in a warm embrace, much to Leland's surprise. Without a prepared response, all she can do is accept the hug.